All right, welcome everybody to the MGF 1107 Test 3 Review Workshop. I'm Noah Schmidt. I'm a math specialist in the Learning Commons, and I'll be facilitating the workshop. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over some problems that were pulled from the practice test for MGF 1107 Test 3. And so the way this works is I always try to give you a little bit of time to try the problem on your own before we go over it together, usually about a minute, minute and a half. It just varies how many steps there are on the problem. So here's the first problem that we'll go over. This says, if you purchase a jacket for $80 and the sales tax rate is 7.5%, how much sales tax will you pay for this item? So I'm going to give you about a minute on this particular problem, and then we'll go over it together. And if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to unmute yourself or put your questions in the chat, and I'll try to monitor the chat and answer any questions you have. So let me give you about a minute on this problem, and then we'll go over it together. All right, this problem says if you purchase a jacket for $80 and the sales tax rate is 7.5%, how much sales tax will you pay for this item? Well, you need to take 7.5% of the $80 that the jacket was priced at, because 7.5% of $80 would be this amount of sales tax that would be paid. So 7.5% can be changed to a decimal, which is just going to occur by just moving the decimal 2 spots to the left. So this would be 0.075, and then 0.075 ends up getting multiplied by $80. And so when you multiply them together, you get $6 to be the sales tax. All right. So does anybody have any questions on this problem? All right, here's the next problem. This says Jeff is a married male filing separately with wages of $65,000. He earned $100 in savings interest and contributed $1,800 to an IRA. He had itemized deductions of $8,500. What is his taxable income? So you basically just need to, you're not going to actually have to find how much income tax. Okay. Yeah. So, well, let's go ahead and go over it if this one together. So basically, you don't have to actually find out how much income tax is owed. You have to determine how much of the income is taxable. So it's basically the gross income, or wages, tips, and basically the gross income plus interest minus adjustments and this is actually the wages and tips. Wages, let's just call it wages. They don't call it tips on this, because this right here is your gross income, the wages and the interest that you earn, dividends, things like that, minus any adjustments would be the adjusted gross income. So what do we have here? We've got $65,000 in wages. This person earned $100 in savings interest. That adds to his income. But he also contributed to $1,800 to an IRA. That's an adjustment. So we're going to subtract off the $1,800, because if he contributed $1,800 to an IRA, then that's going to take away from his taxable income. So this is going to be his adjusted gross income. So when we perform this computation, we get $63,300. Now, the next question is, you have to subtract off his deduction. The question is, do you want to take the standard deduction or the itemized deductions? Well, the goal is to reduce your taxable income by as much as possible. Now, if your itemized deductions are a larger amount than your standard deduction, then you'd want to take your itemized deductions. Now, I'm not sure if they've got the most recent tax table for your test, but in our case, when I taught 1107, 8,500 for the itemized deductions was higher than what the standard deduction would be. The standard deduction would have been 6,350. So we would have wanted to subtract off 8,500 from the adjusted gross income, and that would be your taxable income. But if it's a higher standard deduction like it is now, then if your standard deduction, you want to check your standard deduction on your tax table and determine if it's higher than the itemized deductions. If it was higher than 8,500, then you'd want to subtract whatever the standard deduction is. So this is basically 63,300 minus 8,500, which when you calculate that, you get 54,800 as our taxable income there. All right, does anybody have any questions on this problem? Okay. Any questions? All right, what about this problem? Let's go ahead and try this problem. This says figure the monthly car payment for a new car costing $28,000, financed at 6.9% for 4 years. Figure the monthly car payment for a 3-year-old model of the same car costing $18,000, financed for 4 years at 7.2%. what will be the monthly savings per month by purchasing the used model? For the sake of time, let's just go ahead and go over this together. The formula to use here is the present value formula, which is P for an annuity, which is P equals the payment times bracket 1 minus 1 plus R over N to the negative NT power, close bracket, all over R over N. So your P is you're gonna have to do this twice because you have to do this for the new car and for the used car. So for the new car, now the total amount that the car cost, which for the first car was 28,000, that's going to be your P. So you got 28,000 equals the payment times bracket 1 minus 1 plus R, which is point for the 6.9% would be 0.069 over N. Now if it's monthly, which it is, that N would be 12, and then this is to the negative. N is 12 times T is 4 years, so 4, close the bracket, all over parentheses, R is 0.069. I didn't mean to do that. All right, we're back. So 0.069 over 12, which is R over N. So let me see if you guys can calculate that on the calculator, and I'll do it on my calculator, and let's see what you end up getting for this. You want to basically calculate the entire right side, and then a little trick is you use the reciprocal button, the X to the negative first power button, after you put the whole right side in, and you multiply it by the left side. That's the quickest way to do it, but you'd want to put, let's see what you guys get on your calculator. So I got $669.20. Anybody not get that for this particular
I have
part?
a question.
Yes. Yes.
On the calculator, I just forgot over the break. To do the 28 on that side, would I have to do the X with the little -1? Is that the button I hit?
Absolutely, because you're solving for the payment on the right side. So it's everything on the right side, and then you got to do the X to the negative first power.
Okay, all right. I forgot which button it was. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions on this part? So then you'd have to do this again for the other car, which that would set up this way: 18,000 equals PMT times bracket 1 minus parentheses 1 plus R is 0.072 over N is 12 to the negative 4 years times 12 power, because it's negative NT power, all over R, which is 0.072 over N, which is 12. So let's see what you get there, because we got to get the monthly payment for each car, or the used car and the new car. So I got 432.70 for the used car. So what you have is a situation where the used car has a lower monthly payment than the new car, which wouldn't be surprising, but you have to determine the amount of savings. So you have to subtract the price of the new car subtracted by the price of the used car. And when you do that, you get a savings amount. And the savings amount would be it'd be 236.50, I believe. 236.50. So that's how much savings the person would obtain by purchasing the used car over the new car. All right. So does anybody have any questions there? Okay. Let's just do A on this one. These are all going to be done similarly. Let's see if you can, well, let's go ahead and do this one together for the sake of time on this one. The ones that don't take quite as long, I can let you try to do on your own, but we want to try to maximize our time. We won't be able to get through all of the problems that we are intending to go over because this is a two-part review. So there's also a workshop tomorrow that's scheduled for the same time. So that's when whatever we don't get through today, we'll plan on picking up tomorrow at the same time. So base 3, we're basically converting a 102 in base 3 to base 10. So 102, if you understand place value for different bases, base 10, your place value goes 10 to the 0 power, 10 to the first power, 10 to the second power. 10 to the 0 power is the ones place. 10 to the first power is the tens place. 10 to the second power is the hundreds place, and so forth. That's where we get the names of the place values. For base 3, it's the same idea, except the first place value is 3 to the 0, the second is 3 to the first, the third is 3 to the second. And it just keeps going up by the exponent goes up by 1 each place value. So 3 to the 0 power would be the ones place, 3 to the first power would be the threes place, 3 to the second power would be the nines place. And so now what you do is you take the value of the place value and multiply it by the digit in that place value. So you have a 1 times 2 plus, then you have a 3 times 0 plus, then you have a 9 times 1. And when you do all that, you end up with 1 times 2 is 2, 3 times 0 is 0, plus 9 times 1 is 9. And when you add all that up, you get 11 as your result there. So basically what that means is 102 in base 3 converts to 11 in base 10. Now base 10 is the number system that we use, but you can convert between bases. And in this case, we were converting from base 3 to base 10. All right, does anybody have any questions there? If you were going from base 4 to base 10, instead of having 3 to the 0, 3 to the first, and 3 to the second, you'd have 4 to the 0, 4 to the first, and 4 to the second. So it's just a different base. All right, now let's do this on a different situation. Now we're going to write the base 10 numeral 588 in base 3. So now we're going from base 10 to base 3. Well, we've got to understand our place value again. So we're going to figure out what we need to do on that. We got 3 to the 0 power as the first place value because we want our number to be in base 3. 588, we want it to be in base 3. So we got 3 to the 0, 3 to the first power, 3 to the second power, 3 to the third power. Now 3 to the 0 is 1. 3 to the first power is 3. 3 to the second power is 9. 3 to the third power is 27. Now 3 to the fourth power is 81. 3 to the fifth power is 243. And then if you perform 3 to the sixth power, you end up with 729. That's bigger than our number. We don't want to go bigger than our base 10 number, which is 588. So because it's base 3, the digits could each place value could have, did I? No, oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, that's, sorry about that. This drawing pad sometimes does that, but it was an accident that the drawing pad did that, but I just didn't erase it, but I can try to get it to not come up this time there. But I didn't intend to do that. Thank you for pointing that out. Each place value could have 0, 1, or 2. If it was base 4, you could have a 0, 1, a 2, or a 3. Because when you go up to the base, then you go to the next place value. So we got to determine if we want a 0, 1, or 2 in each of our place values. For 243, I can tell you we want a 2, because if I multiply the 2 by 243, I end up with 486, and that's not bigger than my 588. I want to keep a running total so that my total ends up being 588 in base 10. 81, I could have a 0, a 1, or a 2. I don't want a 2 because if I put a 2, that'll put my running total above 588. But I can put a 1 because if I calculate 1 times 81 is 81, and when I add 486 and 81, I end up with 565. So that's the running total now. That's not larger than 588. Well, 567 I think is the actual result. Yeah, 567. But either way, it's not above 588. 27 though, if I put a 1 or a 2 in the next place value, it will be higher than 588. So we'll put a 0 there. And there's that vertical line again. So you can please feel free to ignore that. The 9 though, see, to go from 567 to 588, I've got to get 21 more to my total. 9, we could put a 2 in there, because if I multiply 2 by 9, I get 18, and that'll add 18 more to the total, which will put us now at 585. So now we need 3 more to the total. Well, that's works out well, because if I put a 1 in the next place value, that would be 1 times 3, which is 3, and that adds to the total, and now you're right at 588. So you don't need any more to your total, which means the last place value is 0. So basically 588 and base 10 converts to 210, 210 in base 3. All right. So does anybody have any questions there? Okay. This one is more of a tax situation. I want everybody to write this information down, and I'm going to bring up the tax table. So if you could, okay, so this says if everybody could write down taxable income, this says Carolyn is able to file as unmarried head of household. Her taxable income is $62,000, and she has a $3,000 tax credit. How much income tax does she owe? Well, we're going to write down taxable income, $62,000, $3,000 tax credit. So if we go to our tax table, and she's an unmarried head of the household, which is the last column. Let me see if I can get this. Okay, there's our tax table right here. So basically, we've got 62,000 in taxable income. So she's a head of household, unmarried head of household, and so you got to see what tax bracket that this person falls in, and it's in this tax bracket right here, the 25% tax bracket. Between her 62,000 falls between 50,401 and 130,150. So you take the 62,000 and everything above the previous upper end of the interval. So the previous interval, 15% tax bracket goes up to 50,400. So you subtract off the 50,400 because anything up to 50,400 is taxed at a different rate. So then 62,000 minus 50,400, that's taxed at 25%. So you multiply by 0.25. Then everything from the 10% bracket, which is 13,250, up to the 15% bracket upper interval, which is 50,400. So you subtract that off, and that amount of money is taxed. Well, I didn't mean to put those parentheses there, but there, this is what I meant to do, is this right here. So that's all taxed at 15%. So you multiply that by 0.15. And then everything up to 13,250 is taxed at 10%. So you take 13,250 and multiply it by 0.1. And so basically that's what you do. You just do 62,000 minus 50,400. Multiply that by 0.25, and that total is 2,900 right here. And then if you take 50,400 minus 13,250 times 0.15, and that total is 55,000 or 5,572.5. And then the 13,250 is taxed at 10%. That's times 0.1. That's 1325. And so you just add all this up, and that's your total amount of income tax owed, except we have a $3,000 tax credit on this problem. So the tax credit, I'll explain what to do after we add all those up. So if you take 2,900, you add up 55,000 or 5,572.5, and then add 1,325. The total amount of tax this person would owe is 9,797.5. But there's a $3,000 tax credit, which means the tax credit basically tells that it basically takes away from the amount of tax owed. So you take the income tax owed and subtract off the tax credit so that they owe less tax than they would have. So you subtract off the $3,000 tax credit, and this person ends up owing $6,797.50 in income tax. Okay. All right, any questions there? Okay. All right, let's go to the next problem. Which is FICA taxes. All right, so we're going to need to go back to the tax table again. So this says if you're self-employed and earned $80,000, what are your FICA taxes? So if we go to a new share, we'll go back to the tax table again. If I can find it. There it is. Well, I don't see the FICA tax table on here. Well, I'll just tell you, there's a FICA tax table, and it's different than the table for income tax. The FICA tax table, basically the person owes up to, if they're self-employed, they owe they have to pay 7.65% of their income on income up to $112,000. Anything over that is then taxed at 1.45%. So this person's not making, unless they're if they're not, well, if they're self-employed, yeah, they actually owe double that. So they owe 15.3%. Because they have to pay taxes for themselves and their business. So they have to pay 15.3% of 80,000. And so you just take 0.153 times 80,000, and you end up with that this person in FICA taxes would owe $12,240. Okay, any questions there? Okay. All right, let me let you try this problem on your own. This says you drive 18,000 miles per year. A hybrid averages 40 miles per gallon, whereas an SUV averages 16 miles per gallon. What will your annual savings be with the hybrid if the average cost of gasoline for your area is $3.80 per gallon? So let me give you about a minute and a half on this problem, and then we'll go over this problem together. Thank you. All right, so the person drives 18,000 miles per year, and so they have to figure out how many total gallons of gas are used in a year. So if they drive 18,000 miles, let's do the hybrid first. So if you take the 18,000 miles and divide by 40 miles per gallon, that'll tell you how many gallons were used of gas were used equals. So when you divide that there, you get that this person used on the year, they used 450 gallons of gas. But the price of gas is $3.80. So you have to multiply this by the $3.80. And so that ends up being, when you multiply that out, you get 1710 for your total amount of gas money spent on gas for the hybrid. For the SUV, things are a little bit different. They're driving the same amount, 18,000, but their miles per gallon is 16 miles per gallon. So we did divide by 16 miles per gallon for that. And so when we divide there, we get 1125. And then that has to multiply by the $3.80 per gallon. Please excuse those vertical lines again. And so this person owes $42.75 per year. So the difference is the amount of savings that the person would have driving a hybrid versus driving an SUV. So if you take 4,275 and you subtract off 1710, you end up with 2565 as the result there. Okay. Anybody have any questions there? So this is the total savings. Okay. This one, I usually kind of skip over this one because this one's just, if you just look at a table. I don't have the table for this. but each of these figures represents a value. And so you take, if you have 2 stick figures, 3 tadpoles, 3 or 2 spot, 1 spiral, then you have this, I don't know, I'm not sure what they call this, but each of those has a value attached to them. So you just multiply each of them by the value of that particular figure, and you add them all up and you get the number again. But does anybody have any trouble with that? Okay. Let's try this problem. This says find the ending balance on March 31st before interest was added. Round to the nearest cent. So basically on this problem, I'm going to let you try it on your own. You have to start with a certain balance and then apply each of these transactions and try to determine what the ending balance was. So let's see if you can do that. I'll give you about a minute and a half on this to try this one, and then we'll go over it together. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start out with 5,200. That was the previous balance. And so if you start out with 5,200, then the first transaction is a $2,000 credit. Now, a credit basically takes away from your balance. A charge adds to your balance. So the $2,000 credit, we're going to subtract that $2,000 off. Then on March 15th, there was a charge for groceries of $120. So you add $120 there. And so then on March 18th, there was a charge of $40 for gas. And that's going to be added to your balance. And then on March 25th, there was a medical charge of $260. So that's going to add to your balance as well. And when we combine all these numbers, all these transactions, we end up with an ending balance of $36.20 would be the ending balance for the month. Okay, does anybody have any questions on this problem? Okay. Let's try this problem. This says find the total annual expense for owning and operating a Mercury Grand Marquis GS if you drive a total of 18,000 miles annually. So if you drive 18,000 miles, well, how much per mile does the person owe for Mercury Grand Marquis GS according to the chart? Anybody see it? Well, if you find the Mercury Grand Marquis GS, that's the second row in our table, and the total amount of costs per mile is 65 cents a mile, and that's for ownership and operating expenses. So you multiply the 18,000 by 0.65 and see what we get there. And when we do that, we get 11,700 as our result there. All right. So does anybody have any questions there? Okay. Let's try this problem. This says with the ending balance plus the finance charge, the balance due at the end of the month billing period is 6,500. This credit card requires a $10 minimum monthly payment if the balance due at the end of the billing period is less than 360. Otherwise, the minimum monthly payment is of the balance due at the end of the billing period it's actually 136. There's a typo there. I need to put that in there. 136. 1 out of 36 is, so you take, if the balance is not less than 360, then you have to pay 136 of the balance due at the end of the period as your minimum monthly payment. And our balance is 6,500. So to find the minimum monthly payment, we need to take 6,500 and multiply it by 1 over 36. And that would be the minimum monthly payment. They don't have to pay the minimum monthly payment. They can pay more than that, but they can't pay any less than the minimum monthly payment. So when we multiply by 136, we get $180.56 would be the minimum monthly payment. Okay. Does anybody have any questions there? Okay. All right, let's try this problem here. This says Janet has been on Weight Watchers for 6 months. She originally weighed 180 pounds and now weighs 150 pounds. What is her percent decrease in weight over these 6 months? Round your answer to the nearest tenth of a percent. Well, percent of change is basically equal to the new number minus the original number divided by the original number times 100. That's the percent of change formula. And so on this problem, she originally weighed $180 and now she weighs 150, or weighed 180 pounds and now weighs 150 pounds. So 150 is the new weight. That goes into new and subtract off by the original weight, which is 180. This is divided by the original weight, which is 180. And you take that and you multiply it by 100, which basically changes from a decimal to a percent. And that gives you the percent of change. So this, when we put that all into the calculator, we end up, and they want us to round the answer to the nearest tenth of a percent. This is a 16.7% decrease because we ended up with a negative number. So it makes it a decrease there. All right. So does anybody have any questions there? Okay. This is another one that we'll have to skip over because we don't have the formula sheet for this, for the Egyptian numerals and Hindu and Arabic numerals to convert there. But let me let you try this problem on your own now that we've gone over one like this. This says convert 73 and base 10 to a base 2 numeral. So let's see if you can convert 73 and base 10 to a number in base 2. Let me give you about 2 minutes on this problem, and then we'll go over this problem together. All right, so now we're working with base 2, which is a little bit more along with if you're probably going to get more problems working with base 10 and base 2 than any of the other problems that we did earlier, but it's the same idea. You make your place values, and this is now base 2 rather than base 3 or base 4. So you start with 2 to the 0 for your first place value, then 2 to the first, then 2 to the second, 2 to the third, then 2 to the fourth, then 2 to the fifth, then 2 to the sixth. Now 2 to the 0 is basically, apologize, let me go ahead and get rid of these vertical lines here. All right, so basically 2 to the 0 is 1, 2 to the first is 2, 2 to the second is 4, 2 to the third is 8, 2 to the fourth is 16, 2 to the fifth is 32, 2 to the sixth is 64. Now, something to keep in mind here is that you can only have a 0 or a 1 in your as your digits in your place value. So if we go above 64, then we're going to go higher than 73, and we can't, that's not our number. That's not what we're looking for. But since we can put a 0 or 1, we start with the 64, 2 to the 6th power. We can either put a 0 or a 1 there. We do want to put a 1 because the 1 will multiply by 64, and that's going to give you 64, and that's our running total so far. We still want to keep a running total, because once we go above 73, then we've gone to where we don't want to go above 73. Now, we move to the next place value, which is 32. That could have a 0 or 1, but 32 would add to, it would go too high on our running total, so we'll put a 0 there. Same with 16. That if that added to 64, that would be above 73, so we'll put a 0 there. For 2 to the third power, that's 8. If we added 8 to our total, that would be 72. That's not above 73, so we can put a 1 in the 2 to the third power blank or digit. For 2 to the second power, that's 4. We don't want to add 4 to 72 because that's going to go above 73, so we'll put a 0 in that place value. Then for 2, we don't want to add 2 to 72. That would be 74, which is above 73. So we'll put a 0 in that digit. And then for the 1, that's what we need to add to our total, because 72 plus 1 is 73, which is our base 10 number. So we'll put a 1 there in that place value. So 1 0 0 1 0 0 1 is our base 2 number for base 70 or 73 and base 10. So does anybody have any questions there? Okay. Write 5,649 as a Roman numeral. Does anybody have trouble with Roman numerals? Essentially, if you're going to do this, you've got to have a you see, if you put basically our numerals are I's represent 1, V's represent 5, X represents 10, L represents 50, C represents 100, D represents 500, and M represents 1,000. So if we want to write 5,000, though, the others, what you have to understand is that if a smaller letter, a letter with a smaller value precedes a letter with a larger value, then it takes away from the total. If a letter with a smaller value comes after a letter with a larger value, then it adds to the total. So if I want to get 5,000, I need to put a V, because that's a 5. The V represents 5, but we got to get 5,000 out of it. We don't want to put 5M letters. That's not going to do it. That violates a rule that we can't. It's just like we don't put 5 I's to get 5. We have a V for 5, but the procedure here to get 5,000 is to put a V with a line above it, because the V with a line above it, basically the line above it takes the V, which is 5, and multiplies it by 1,000, and that's where you get your 5,000 total from. But then to get 600, we need to have a D, which is 500, and then we need another 100 to get 600. So that we'll put a C that precedes, or that follows a D, and then we've got to get 49 more in the total. Now what we want to do for 49 is we want to get 40 first. So to get 40, you need to have an X preceding a L, because the X represents 10, and if it precedes L, which is 50, that 10 would take away from the 50, and you get 40 from that group. But then you got to get another 9, and then to get another 9, let's put an I preceding an X, because the I is a 1, which if it precedes the X, which is a 10, that 1 will take away from 10, and that will cause that group to be 9. So this is your Roman numeral right here. All right, so does anybody have any questions there? Okay. This is another income tax question. I think we're pretty much over halfway. Let me see how many more we've got. We've got about 10 more. I want to leave some of these for tomorrow, so this is going to be our stopping point for today. So we'll pick up at number 17 tomorrow in tomorrow's workshop. I'm going to send the recording as soon as I get it downloaded and set up. I'm going to plan on sending the recording in about an hour, so you'll have the recording of this workshop. And tomorrow's workshop is scheduled for the same time, 1:30 to 3. We started a little bit early, so I usually get on there about 1:20. So oh, so we got someone who won't be able to come tomorrow. I'm going to be sending this to your Outlook email. So if you check your Outlook email, that's where I'll send the recordings to. So this recording will be first. It'll go to your Outlook email, and then whenever tomorrow's workshop takes place, after I get the recording set up for that, then I'll plan on sending that tomorrow to your Outlook email as well. Okay. All right. So you're welcome. Thank you everybody for coming, and please feel free to use the procedures for receiving tutoring from the Learning Commons if you need assistance with tutoring. But otherwise, if you'd like to come to tomorrow's workshop, hope to see you then. If not, then I'll plan on getting the recording to you by your email. So hope you guys have a wonderful day, and thank you again for coming.